Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany, and today's video is going to be all about how I passed my real estate exam on the very first try. I'm going to be sharing with you all the real estate training school that I decided to go through, why I decided to go through that particular program. Also, I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks that I learned through my psychology class, actually, that really helped me retain the information that I needed to be able to retain to pass my real estate exam. I'm going to be sharing some other best practices and just going over information pertaining to my journey. Hopefully it helps you. If you have any questions or any input, please feel free to leave the comments down below. I really appreciate it. And without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. You may see me looking down because I have some notes written right in front of me. The first thing that I want to go over is the real estate school, the training program that I decided to use. Now, there's a ton of different schools and trainings out there for real estate. Some are online, some are in person. You really just have to get a feel for what kind of learner you are. For me, I'm very used to taking online training courses, online classes. I am currently in school and I do a lot of that schoolwork online. So I'm used to being in the classroom, like I said, or online. And so for me, I felt like it would work better for me to be virtual. So that's what I decided to do. I started looking at different virtual training courses and still didn't know which one was the best one, because obviously all of them are going to have positive and negative reviews. Some of them are going to say they're the best. A lot of them are going to say they're the best. And so you really have to figure out which one really is the best. And so I was really interested in real estate before I decided to purchase a course and start the training. I went in and talked to my local broker, one of the local brokers, and I knew him because the first home that I bought, the man that sold me the first home was really good friends with a broker here. So I was connected with him, and we were communicating about what I wanted to do and just how real estate worked, all the things that you can do with real estate, because once you get your license, there's more that you can do that doesn't involve being a realtor. I just want to throw that out there. There's a lot of different things that you can do with having your license if you don't want to be a realtor. And so we were just talking about some different things and some options available. And when I was working with him, I got connected to someone else, someone that actually worked with him. She was like the front desk staff, and she was also working on getting her real estate license. She explained that she failed her first test, and I think she may have even failed the second test, and she didn't pass until the third one. And she was going over some podcasts that she listened to. She was also explaining some different schools that she recommended me go through. And she listed 2 schools on this it wasn't a piece of paper, it was an email that I can't find for some reason. If I do find the email or come across it, I'll link the name across the screen. But she gave me 2 real estate schools that she really thought were pretty good. Aceable is the school that I ended up going with. There is a link down below if you want to check out Aceable. Aceable is who I decided to go with. She said that Aceable was being mentioned on the podcast that she listened to. And then she decided to go with another real estate school. For me, when I'm deciding what type of schooling I want to go to or go into, or what type of program is best for me, I really have to get a feel for it. So I like to go to the website. I like to look at the FAQs. I like to kind of navigate on the site and see what kind of feeling I get. Is it easy to navigate? Do they have accessible tech support? If I have a question, am I able to get my question answered? Is the information laid out in a format that is clear for me? Because just because it worked for somebody doesn't mean it's going to work for me. So that's my first piece of advice. I did choose Aceable, but for you all out there searching for the right real estate training school, take a look at different websites. See what they all have to offer. If it's an in-person school, call, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask a crazy question or a dumb question. This is your money. This is your future. Ask away. So that's what I decided to do. Now, the training course consisted of 40 hours. When I first heard about 40 hours, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I can do that very quickly, right? Just give me let's go ahead and purchase this and I'll get done by the end of this week. I was completely wrong about that, because initially I was very conscious about, and I wanted to be very intentional about learning everything that I was taken in, because it's a lot of information. And so I would write notes, and they do have games along the way. Like they have different birds of a feather game where you have to choose like certain terms and match them to particular topics that they're presenting you with. They have different tests that you have to pass after each chapter in order to move on to the next chapter. They have different like not live, but pre-recorded videos of actual people speaking about their experience in real estate and kind of going over the material again with you. They have an option where you can have the material read to you, or you can, read it yourself. And so I was listening to the recordings, and I was writing notes and doing flashcards, and that was working, but I realized that it was taking so long. And one of the things that you want to be careful about when you are studying a course, and it can be, and you're taking your time with it, is to remember that you want to make sure that your brain is not purging out that information. You want to make sure that the information that you're learning is staying fresh, because although you've learned this information, let's say last month, you don't want to start, at chapter 6. Let's say you left off on chapter 6 last month, and now you're coming back to do the rest of the chapters. You don't want to forget that information that you learned initially and then start just, relearning more information. You want to make sure that you're doing a good job with retaining all the information. So timing is key. If you're in a position in your life and you're like, look, I'm not really going to have time to really study, then you want to figure out like when's a good time for you, because I would hate for you to start studying and then lose the information that you started learning. So halfway through, I would say a little less than halfway through my training, I said, you know what? If I'm going at this pace, I'm probably not going to get done at my deadline. I set deadlines for myself before I start anything, because I want to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable. And I also want to make sure that I'm making the pace that I want to make. And then I don't want to lose information that I've already learned. I want the information to be somewhat fresh. So what I would recommend doing is trying to get through as much as you can, not just listening to listen, but really soak up as much as you can. The parts that you want to go back to, like writing yourself a note, or an ACEable, they have an option where if you don't pass like a certain chapter, if one of your chapter tests is very low or you don't pass, they'll have like a red lightning bolt, so you can always go back. And I didn't like the lightning bolt, so I really didn't understand the full concept of the lightning bolt, or didn't appreciate the concept of the lightning bolt until it was time for me to go back and kind of study. And I'm like, dang, I cleared the lightning bolts after I retook the test and I got a higher score, but I should have kept those lightning bolts there so that I can have a marker to go back and refresh on certain material. The next point that I want to mention to you all is Quizlet. So I always try to think of different trendy ways to study. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I was doing a lot of flashcards, which really worked for me, but I didn't want to carry so many flashcards around. I was carrying flashcards around for my child psychology test, and I was carrying flashcards now for real estate. And it was just so many flashcards, and I'm like, oh, like if only there was an app where I didn't have to carry these physical flashcards. And so I Googled different apps, and Quizlet came up. Quizlet is a really, really cool app. This video is not sponsored, but it's really helpful. I'm even showing my son how to use Quizlet for his driver's training written part of his test. But it's really cool because you can create your flashcards, and this is a way that you can keep yourself refreshed with the information without having to carry around the cards. So if you're sitting in the car waiting for, I don't know, your food at the drive-thru, then you can go ahead and start quizzing yourself. If you're sitting at the nail salon waiting for your turn, go ahead and start quizzing yourself. At the barber shop, like wherever you're sitting, you can start quizzing yourself. And not just that, but it's really cool because there are other people on there that have created different flashcards and learning material for your specific topic. Now, what I will say is, when I went on Quizlet to start studying for the Michigan real estate, I noticed that some of the flashcards, like some of the definitions that were there, did not match what ACEable had in their definitions. And so I'm like, I don't really want to use everyone else's. I'm not going to use anyone else's cards. I'm going to go ahead and create my own material. And then also ACEable has a lot of different, like they have a key term sheet. They have different, like a math equation sheet to give you some of the equations for some of the different type of questions and calculations that you may be presented with on your exam. And I think the keywords are really helpful. So what I did is I copied and pasted the keywords right into Quizlet, and Quizlet generated the keywords for me in flashcards, and they also started testing me. So it was different tests that I could choose. Like some tests could be true or false, some could be multiple questions. And I just went ahead and I started just quizzing myself and taking and really doing Quizlet like multiple times a day. And on top of going back, reviewing my notes, and still pacing myself with the modules. So that's what I would do. That's how I would implement Quizlet. I also want to go back to the key terms that Aceable has. One of the reasons that I really enjoyed Aceable is, like I mentioned before, it was clear information. They had a support desk. If I had questions, I could always reach out and ask them the questions. And then I like the fact that they have key terms. Now, my background has been in the financial industry. I was a loan officer before. I worked in lending, mortgage servicer, all of that. So I have a background already in lending. So some of the information was reviewed for me, but a lot of it was new information. A lot of it was like, whoa, because you can work in the financial industry all day long, but there's a reason that there is specific training for real estate. So even if you're like me and you're like, hey, I have some background, you still want to take the training very seriously and learn your keywords, learn the key terms, because you may be reading a question and the difference between a correct answer and wrong answer lies in the context of the terms that you're reading. And so I was told that when I took my test, be careful, because the test was going to throw in a lot of unnecessary information and confuse you. And that wasn't my experience at all. I feel like the questions were phrased with enough information. You just have to be able to read through it very slowly and figure out what they're asking. And on some questions, it's not just laid out very easily, but I don't think that the questions, in my opinion, was giving too much information. I think you just have to know what information it's asking and then use all of the information that they gave you in the question to find the correct answer. With that being said, the terminology is going to come in play. I mean, if you can learn the terms, I feel like you can pass the exam. If you learn the equations on how to find a square footage, which is very simple, how to find the frontage, what else? What are some other, figuring out the taxes were going to be based on the Michigan tax rate. Like, just if you could learn key concepts like how many feet are in an acre, figuring out the different terminologies, like what is a hectare, just different. If you can study those sheets that Aceable has, like I said, the terms and the different equations, then I feel like you'd have a really great chance at passing, because that helped me tremendously. Now, not just reading over the terms, but really learning the terms. So what I would do is I would read through one page of the terms. I would challenge myself to think of a scenario with a term, because that's also embedding that term not just into my short-term memory, but into my long-term memory. And I learned this, like I said, during psychology, just how we process information, our sensory input, and also how we retain that information. So a lot of times when you make whatever you're learning personable to you, thinking about certain instances that you have experienced that can tie right back into something that you can remember, or something that's personable to you, will help you remember a certain phrase. So I would do a lot of mnemonics, and pretty much those are just, funny sayings or sentences that I created myself that would help me remember certain points that I didn't want to forget. So I'm looking back down at my notes to see if I left anything else. And then also using the terms in sentences. So trying your best to incorporate as much of the terms that you learn that day into sentences with whoever you're talking to. And they may be saying, okay, why is she talking like this? But it really helps you retain that information and to get those keywords embedded. It helps a lot better than just reading. Sometimes people don't pass their tests, not even just in real estate, but just general, because that information isn't really stuck in their long-term memory. Another thing that I learned in psychology is that our brain is picking up on so many different things, even as we're studying. So even if you're studying in the same place, so let me say this, with Quizlet, I was out and about doing whatever, still studying when I had time. I was studying at home, but there would be a certain place in my room that I would go to and I would study and listen to the chapters. What I would do is I would pick a spot in my room to continuously study, primarily study, I should say, so that my brain would get used to that particular spot in my room. And so when I knew that there was an option for me to be able to take the exam online, where did you think I took my test? I took it in the exact same spot that I was studying. And so it was easier for me because my brain was picking up on, it was easier for my brain to recall certain information that I read and that I was studying in that specific spot, because I was back in that spot where all of the training took place. I know it may sound kind of crazy, but there's a lot of studies on it that your brain, you do better taking tests. A lot of people do better taking tests in the same area that they were studying at. It makes sense. It works. I've tried it. So that also helped me a lot. Another thing that I wanted to go over is do review tests. So although ACEable provided tests after every chapter, I didn't leave it there. I also would quiz myself on different quizzes that Google provided. All you have to do is Google free practice real estate test for your state, and different tests will come up. And I would just take different tests. Some of the tests had like 10 free questions, and then they wanted you to sign up for like some type of program, and I didn't do it. Some had 20 free questions and then wanted you to sign up for something. And then some, I actually found one that had like 115 questions, which was the exact amount of questions that I was going to be asked on my Michigan real estate exam. And so I started taking those questions so I started taking that exam. And my goal was to get over 90% 3 times in a row. And I got that idea from ACEable, because ACEable said at the end of my training that they recommend me take their practice test for 3 times and get 90 in a row before I go ahead and take the state test. And so I did that. I was taking their test multiple times. I think the first time I took it, I got like a 73%, then I got like an 80, then I got like a 90, and then I stopped studying for a minute. And then I went back to take the test and I got like an 80. And so I wanted to get 90 consecutively. And I wanted to get to the point where I was getting above 90 on all of the practice tests. And so that's what I did. I went back and I looked at different websites, different practice tests that were free, didn't pay for any other material, because you're going to be spending enough money as it is with real estate. The training is just the beginning. So trust me when I say that. I'll be giving you all some more information on finding brokerages and who I decided to go with and why later on. But you might as well save all that you can. And then it's a fee every time you take the test. So it's not like it's something free when you go and you register for your state exam. At least in Michigan, it's not. I think it's $79, and it's that $79 every time you fail. So I knew I didn't want to pay $79 again at all. And then I also paid $88 for, I think it was for my something for Michigan. I don't know exactly what it was, but if I find out, I'll put it across the screen. But just putting that out there to say there's a lot of fees associated with it. But nevertheless, I did go ahead and I reviewed my notes. I continued doing different practice tests. I think it's really important to do different practice tests aside from the training or the schooling that you decided to go to, because whatever training or program that you decided to choose, whether it's in person or online, you have to realize that the training is kind of centered and filtered around their verbiage. And I mean, it's still centered around, you passing, because you passing, it makes their, it's better for their company. But I still wanted to be versed with all of the different questions and different ways that questions can be phrased so that I wouldn't be confused on the test. Had I had just studied through one specific program, I may be a little confused and thrown off. So I wanted to do practice tests through different websites to make sure that I got practice in with different type of questions than just the questions that I was used to. So that also helped me. And did I put anything else? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and save how the at-home real estate exam went for my next video. I do want to say though, another thing that helped me was putting certain terms as screensavers on my phone. So when I was going through some of the material, ASABLE will have different charts to kind of, sometimes they compare different, like different ownerships, and they had like a little chart. And so I took a screenshot of the chart and I put it on my screensaver. Certain terms that I just couldn't remember, I would go ahead and take a screenshot and use it as my screensaver. And then I also wrote sticky notes and put them on my bathroom window just so that I could see it every day. So whatever you can do to keep all of those terms fresh in your mind. Don't take too long on learning the material and taking the test, but also don't rush to the point that you're not retaining any information. Create different mnemonics, tests on different platforms. You can find some free tests out there. What else? Find a specific place that you can, if you're planning on taking your exam at home, that you are comfortable studying so that you can take your exam in that same spot. And hopefully a lot of different information that you learned will come back to you sitting in that spot. My psychology professor explained it's similar to like when you get up and you go in the kitchen for something and you're in the kitchen and you forget why you went in there, and then you come back and you sit back down wherever you were sitting on the couch or wherever, and then you're like, oh, I remember I was going in the kitchen to get a fork. Sometimes our mind just works like that. So pick a spot where you're comfortable learning and testing. And then also don't be afraid to constantly keep that information fresh by tying those terms back to something that's personable to you, and or using that information, like those terms, in conversation. So I'm going to be going over another video explaining how everything went with taking my exam at home. It was very, very interesting. I'm used to taking exams at home with like a lockdown browser, meaning you can't pull up any other websites. You're on camera the entire time. You can't really move outside of the camera or have, anything. You really can't cheat, right? And so the real estate was even more strenuous than those exams. You have a proctor, and that proctor made me take off my bracelet, made me pull my hair back to make sure there were no ear pods in my ear, checked under my table. I had to show them my ceiling, my floor, my desk. I had to remove my coffee off. Everything, my keypad. It was very interesting. So I'll be making a separate video on that. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you on the next video. Bye.